It's the 15th of the 2nd, 2025. I feel like we've got to get techie as far as F1 centric threads, news, and updates at which we need to pull. There's a gazillion bits and bobs going on. Gary Anderson talking about the FW47 Williams iteration and why they've lacked ambition. It looks like the same car as 2024, almost sacrificing Carlos Sainz's hopes of winning a championship at the altar of reason or unreason even. Surely develop the car, but James Vowles of course will argue that their focus now is on 2026, that their hopes of winning silverware in 2025 is gone. So too George Russell of King's Lynn, Norfolk, talking about Maximilian Verstappen renewing the beef that so ensued last year. Remember, Max told George Russell that he was going to put him on his head by dint of the conversation that they had in the steward's room. George Russell apparently, per Maximilian Verstappen, was not talking in the spirit of the F1 game, that the drivers are meant to be on this side and the stewards are meant to be on that side. I will put you on your head into turn one, is what Max said to George Russell. George Russell responded by saying that Max Verstappen is a bully and needs putting in his place. George Russell now this year talking about he wants to be a world champion, that he wants to continue rivalries with one Maximilian Verstappen, and I don't hate it. I'm not sure that George Russell is barking up the right tree necessarily, particularly if you consider Mercedes and what they will build in 2025 as a car. A driver would be as brilliant as a Senna or a Fangio or a Prost even, but without a car they are nothing. George Russell might want to take a chill pill for a bit. But you know what? There is only one topic on the docket today. I'm going to talk about Lando Norris. I'm so curious. I'm invested in who's going to win this championship. Now, we talked earlier on, didn't we? And I said that, listen, as far as the circumstances, as murky as my crystal ball is, the circumstances are set up now for Lando Norris to thrive. Maximilian Verstappen has 8 points on his license. Those points, the first of those points, will only tumble off of his super license. As at Austria, that's like race 10. Or something. Between now and then, Maximilian Verstappen has to keep his nose clean. Therefore, as far as notable material variable change, Max has got a little one on the way. Red Bull are still in chaos. In stark contrast, Lando Norris's McLaren seem like they're en hora buena. Parabolic settings do one of these. Andrea Stella says that they've continued to develop the car in a way that's linear. They've broadened the aerodynamic canvas upon which the legend, the last wing bender, or flexer even, can paint his masterpiece. Sistine Chapel settings. They've narrowed the monocoque that gives them that flexibility, therefore, to change variables, aero bits and bobs, inlets, etc. It seems like McLaren are in a good place. Zach Brown, so too, recently has said that they will leverage pit stops and team orders with a view to benefit the one who has the best chance of winning a championship. I'm starting to jump on the good ship McLaren, I'll be honest with you. I started to buy into it all, started to drink the copium, think that Lando Norris as current favourite to win the World Drivers' Championship 3-1 per the odds makers, that maybe they have some rationale. Maybe that's the most sensible thing to do if indeed you're a forensic accountant. But then we get a bloody interview courtesy of the legends over at The Fast and the Curious. Link will be in the description to this podcast. And Lando Norris is talking some wild stuff, I've got to be honest. Listen, I'll tell you this story. There was once upon a time, I watch athletics and love myself some Olympics, Usain Bolt, etc. But before there was Usain Bolt, there was a dude called Asafa Powell. And on paper, that dude was faster than Usain Bolt. Around the circuit before the paid events, Asafa Powell would trump Usain Bolt. He was quicker, better on paper, a sexier running style. He had everything to beat Usain Bolt, but every time they would get to semi-finals and finals, Asafa Powell just didn't have the minerals. He couldn't bring out the best of himself at the points when it mattered most. And I think there are similarities between Asafa Powell and Lando Norris. Why? Let me set the scene for you. I was doing a bit of due diligence before I came on. I wanted to present some facts to you. Look, Here's what I know about Lando Norris. If he loses the championship this year, it won't be due to the fact that that he's not quick enough. As an example, we saw him last year put 20 seconds on Maximilian Verstappen at Zandvoort. He was brilliant then. You saw him at Singapore. Okay, yes, he had a couple lapses in concentration. Attention span was minimal, but broadly speaking, he was directionally correct, nailing himself and the rest of those drivers on the grid. Singapore, Zandvoort, God tier each and every single time. That's me saying that Lando Norris doesn't want footability. There are champions in F1 history who have had much less talent than him. But every time I hear him speak, I've got to ask myself questions. I will be honest. Roll the first audio clip, Cameron.
You know, you were talking about the wins earlier.
Yeah.
There were some weekends last year, like Zandvoort, like Abu Dhabi, where you looked so in control. And it was like, oh, this is someone that looks properly ready to fight for a world championship. And because you were right up there, that scrutiny level, I thought, looking from the outside, went up last year.
Sure.
And there were some weekends where you were scrutinised more and people were harsh on you in some ways, where weekends where it went wrong as such or where it didn't quite go as well as you'd like it to.
Yeah.
How difficult was that to deal with at the time, that jump in pressure of scrutiny? And have you reflected on that much over the winter?
Yeah. I mean, rightly so. Like, I'm all up for people having their own opinions and saying, you know, what happens if he did this? Should he have done that? Yeah. I think the only thing that I don't respect, like I respect all those things, you know, and a lot of this people's jobs to kind of comment to these things and so forth. The only thing you don't respect is like people who think they know better when they most likely don't, because they weren't in that situation, they're not living that moment.
Let me pause there for a second. I'm sick and tired of drivers and athletes saying that sideline merchants, people who cover the sport for a living, who might never have turned a wheel in anger, don't have the requisite minerals, knowledge or intelligence to speak about the sport. Please see as your Exhibit A, Peter D. Windsor, a more knowledgeable person in F1 you will never meet in your life. He's lived this. When Nigel Mansell didn't have a drive, Peter D. Windsor was writing the letters, canvassing, pitching Nigel Mansell's services to teams in real time. That dude has the length and breadth of service, and so too F1 knowledge. What is Lando Norris talking about? I don't understand that. I take exception to that. At Safak, you're a legend. Drivers who scream the hardest that they're going to win, like Lando and George, won't win. They have to show something first before they show off. That's why I'm betting on Max, Lewis, Charles or Oscar. I don't hate it, Safak, I'll be honest with you. But what I do hate is Lando Norris's tone here. They say the first step to redemption is admitting that you have a problem in the first instance. And Lando Norris sounds more like Kevin and Perry here. A tumultuous, mercurial teenager raging against the system. Am I right or wrong here? Am I being too harsh on Lando Norris? Roll the clip.
And just false stuff that's just, you're like, how the hell has someone come up with something?
There's a lot of conspiracy theories in this sport nowadays.
There's a lot, but people...
Go on then. What conspiracies are we talking about here? You've heard me give Lando Norris his credit. Nobody's not going to tell me that he's not quick enough to win a championship. However, the facts are these. Nobody lost more places on the first lap than Lando Norris in 2024. 28 of them. You'll recall, Qatari didn't see the yellows when Max Verstappen only had one bite at the cherry. He saw the yellows. Lando Norris had the opportunity to see the double waved and the flashing yellows. He didn't see either. Max Verstappen was right to call him out on that then. Similar scenario at Baku, but he had the opportunity to bend/break the rules right. Baku qualifying, he completely eased off. If you see yellows, what you want to do in karting is do one of these right. You put your hands up so that the marshals are aware that you need to back off. Don't completely ease out the throttle. Surely this dude's been racing all his life and he knows this. Therefore, I say, my supposition is as follows. In 2024, Lando Norris lacked the craft, the racecraft and the devilment requisite to take it to one Maximilian Verstappen and keep him honest over the course of a 24 race season. Roll the audio clip.
Don't call it conspiracy theories now. They just call it their facts.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you could... It's my personal fact.
Yeah. It's actually
that's not how it works.
What I've just read out to you, the aforementioned, does that sound like personal facts? Am I being fake news F1 media, or are those the facts as they set? Have I set them fair? Call me out, chat, if you disagree with anything that I've just said there. Plus, you want more facts? Daniel Valente on Twitter says as follows. There was no driver on the grid last year that had a better average qualifying position from the summer break to the end of the season than Lando Norris. 3.5 versus George Russell of Kingsley Norfolk, 3.9. Max Verstappen's average qualifying position, 4.4. Piastri's 5.6. Charles Leclerc's 5.7. Ergo, Lando Norris had the opportunity. Somehow, though, they and he managed to seize defeat from the jaws of victory. Roll the audio clip.
That's not the definition of the fact. So it's you learn how to deal with these things, and that's something I probably was affected by a lot more before. I think last year I've been more and more you just got to live with it and roll with it. The fact that people are criticizing you or supporting you. Of course, you always are much happy about those supporters. But I know I'm going to get criticized. I criticize myself all the time. I want my team to criticize me.
So, listen, for me, Lando, and again, that's a clip taken from the Fast and the Curious. I will link the podcast in the description. It's well worth a listen. Go and support those guys. God tier interview. However, I don't know what to make of Lando Norris. He sounds like, in his tone, somebody that's wrestling with the truth. He's saying that people are talking about criticising him at the altar of fake news. I've just given you the facts and stats. That dude, a couple of things. I saw somebody on Reddit say that Lando Norris in the off-season only needed to focus on one thing. Sack off quadrant, sack off driving in the F40, sack off all of the extracurricular activities. For Lando Norris needs to realise that what he's not is Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton has that level of natural talent where he can go to the Met Gala or New York Fashion Week and rock up the same race weekend and put in a god tier lap like 2018 Singapore. I don't think Lando is there just yet, as brilliant as he is. And I only say that to say this. The F1 Reddit comment went something like this. One thing that Lando needed to do, practice and drill for his starts. 28 places lost on the first lap. What are we doing here? And again, that's a function of the fact that he's qualifying so high up the field, of course. That makes sense. But surely a bit of defensive posture on the line. Surely. I was watching the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. One of the times when he got a brilliant start and managed to consolidate for his position. But surely sometimes processes over outcomes. Even then, he didn't have the defensive posture that so characterised Michael Schumacher consolidating his pole positions off the line each and every single bloody time. Lando Norris was still vulnerable. Had Charles Leclerc behind him got a decent start, I'm convinced, rewatching Abu Dhabi 2024, that he would have beat him into turn one, because Lando does as Lando always does and leaves the door wide open. If Max has been starting in second position, there is no way in hell that Lando would have made it to the end of that first lap in first position. Ergo, Lando's yet to admit to himself that he has himself a problem off the starts. How about we dial in the appropriate amount of RPM to get a proper god tier launch off the line for once? How about we angle into turn one as if we are trying to defend something, not give something away? Am I being too harsh, chat? F1 boy. Am I being daft? I just don't know with this Lando fella. It's techie. It's a juxtaposition, though, a dichotomy that I've yet to solve for with my very noddy B-spec F1 brain. Roll the second audio clip.
And that's just, again, my way of doing things. I feel like everyone's just so stuck with, you have to do this, everyone does this, this is the way you have to do it. When none of it's true. It's just finding your own way of living, your own way of thinking, your own way of talking, all of these things. There is never really a correct way and a wrong way of doing a lot of things.
Well, I beg to differ, Lando Norris. Of course there is a right way. Granted, there is subjectivity in this. No one can superimpose Ayrton Senna's way of going about his business onto Lando Norris, because they are different people, different personalities, different drivers even. But as far as what we're talking about, the mistakes that were made, the foibles as far as his team, not establishing a clear driver hierarchy. Zak Brown's come out and said that he realises that they made mistakes at Monza as an example. So to Hungary, by extension. Some of these circumstances, there absolutely is a right way to go about them, Lando Norris. I beg to differ, sir. Roll the audio clip.
But people think too much of the time that there is. So, you just find your own way of doing it. And I feel like that's what I kind of clicked last year, halfway through, 3/4 of the way through with, okay, no, I just crack on with doing my own thing and focus on myself. And that's...
Again, I beg to differ. This is chaos. This is chaos. Evidently false Lando Norris. And I do like myself some Lando. I know I criticise him a lot, but I criticise him out of love because I know that he's a brilliant peddler. Super quick. Quicker than almost anybody on any given Sunday, right? So I want him to deliver on his hitherto, as of yet, unfulfilled potential. What's he talking about, though? There's no right way to get off the line. Listen, if past this prologue, the likes of Sebastian Vettel has made an industry, won 4 championships out of doing this, qualifying on pole and then lights to flag victory, Sebastian Vettel couldn't race. It would be disingenuous to argue anything but that. He couldn't come through the pack. You remember him trying to come through the pack and then entangling with Mark Webber each and every single race weekend. He didn't have that in his locker, but yet and still he was able to win 4 championships. Why? Because he understood his strengths and his weaknesses. Therefore, put it on pole, lights the flag victory. Thereby, therein mitigating the need to expose your weaknesses. Why can't Lando Norris have that singularity of focus and understand his challenge, his potential championship in that vein? Roll the audio clip.
Seem to work, so that's how I'll go into this year. But I know I'm going to make mistakes, and I know I'm going to not have perfect race and those types of things, the same as any athlete or whatever. But yeah, I don't mind what people say, to be honest, because I'm the first to criticize myself. I'm also the first to be honest and say, yeah, I did a job today, or I messed this up, or I did that wrong. I'll happily admit it, maybe not happily, but I'll always admit it.
Honestly, chat, I don't know about this fella. Jekyll and Hyde. Sometimes he sounds like he's got the attitude of a world champion, but sometimes it sounds like, for him, the foible, the principal one is this: there is a fine line between coping and delusion. And I think that Lando needs to have an honest assessment and a serious chat with himself in the accountability mirror. What I don't want to see and fear now, notwithstanding the circumstances lining up for Lando Norris, he has the quickest car ostensibly, some say. Maximilian Verstappen and Red Bull struggling at each and every single turn. Are they going to give Max Verstappen the car that he needs? There are all these questions ensuing. Meanwhile, Andrea Stella saying that they're developing the car in a way that's singular, linear even. I feel like Lando Norris, again, don't trust me, fact check me at each and every single juncture, but I feel like, notwithstanding my crystal ball being as murky as the next person's, I feel like all the odds are stacked in his favour, but I fear that yet again this dude's going to seize defeat from the jaws of victory by dint of some of his verbiage, the way that he talks, dismissive almost. There is a sort of willful negligence. I just don't think he understands what he's done. Not once did I hear him talk about starts. Not once did I hear about him talk about defensive posture. Not once did I hear about him talk about team orders or lack thereof, which makes me feel that I'm not sure whether this dude understands the problems, the dragons for which he needs to slay in 2025. And that, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, as far as Lando Norris's not insubstantial chances and or probabilities as far as the championship of the drivers variety in 2025, as far as that, if that's the conversation that we're having, that leaves me and my B-spec noddy F1 mind ever so slightly concerned. What are we doing here?